Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and I've been having a conversation with the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Muda Yusuf. We've been looking at the private sector agenda for a new federal administration, and he's still here with me in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf, for sticking around. Well, just before we start the conversation, because I remember that, before I went on that quick break, I talked about the fact that we'll come back and look at Lagos State in particular. But just before we continue that conversation, let's quickly, talk about one aspect. I don't know how that skipped me. Talking about the public-private partnership models that we know that the federal government has been trying to implement or inculcate in trying to grow the economy. But there's been some challenges. How should this area be focused on now to encourage, more development and creation of jobs, as we say?
Well, the PPP model is one of the biggest windows for the private sector to support any government. And the whole idea is to harness the opportunities of private sector capital and private sector expertise in the delivery of projects for government, particularly infrastructure.
Sure.
Because we have huge infrastructure deficit in this economy. And of course, there's a limit to which the government can meet the entire infrastructure needs. There are constraints about funding. The fiscal outlook is not so fantastic because of course, we have the huge debt already hanging over us, domestic and foreign, and we have the kind of outlook we have with regard to oil revenue. So there are going to be some fiscal challenges that even the incoming administration will face. And because of that, the PPP model is a very, very critical element in the delivery of infrastructure. So the government needs to look at it very critically, identify what sectors of the economy and what projects can be supported by PPP, identify what components of the PPP is appropriate. Because you have a component that will require just private sector management, there's a component that could require the entire ownership by the private sector, and so on and so forth. So the public-private partnership is very key in the delivery of infrastructure. And the incoming administration, of course, looking at their manifesto, has said that they intend to invest a lot in infrastructure.
Okay. Now, still looking at, key states. Let's focus on the states now. Let's look at Lagos State in particular. It's Nigeria's economic capital with a GDP estimate of about $200 billion as of 2013. Now, the state boasts of large industries and commercial activities. And as the elections come up this weekend, all eyes are actually on Lagos, the center of business, commerce, and finance. What are your expectations?
Well, Lagos is very strategic. And when you talk about the economy of this country, I think the key barometer is actually Lagos, because it is the commercial now center of this country. Of course, there is a lot of expectations. We expect that learning from the experience of the last election, the March 28th election, we expect the process to be more credible. We also expect that the voter turnout will also be better. Because all the frustrations that we encountered at the first election, card reader, all sorts of things, and I'm sure we get over that. And Lagosians, by virtue of the cosmopolitan nature, the level of awareness, the level of consciousness, the level of even wanting to be part of the process is quite high. So I expect that the turnout should be better, and I encourage the citizens to turn out, to be part of this process, so that they make they elect the government of their choice.
Okay. Now, in electing the government of the people's choice, will you talk about how doing business will be like for them? Because that's another thing they're going to have topmost on their minds when they're electing the new governor. And according to 2014 World Bank data on Lagos, Lagos is actually ranked number 4 on the ease of doing business. Talk to us about your experiences on doing business here in Lagos.
Well, doing business in Lagos has been very good. First, there are tremendous opportunities here in Lagos by virtue of the population, by virtue of the fact that this is a port city. This is also the state that houses the largest, the biggest international airport in the country. And this is like also the nexus, I mean, the melting pot of business. virtually all businesses around the country converge on Lagos here to do one kind of business or the other. So things have been, life has been good. Things have been very good. Of course, there will always be room for improvement. I mean, there is no perfect system anywhere. We have seen a lot of progress, particularly in terms of investment in infrastructure, investment in security. At least Lagos is much safer now than ever before. Although occasionally we still have issues, but we have come a long way.
Now, in terms of areas in construction permits, for instance, and property registration in Lagos, what are your comments on it?
Well, it has improved from the kind of feedback we get, because there has been some ICT application into the processes, of land registration and perfection of titles. So there has been some improvement, but we are not there yet. But really, there has been some improvement from what it was, from what it is now. There has been some improvement.
In terms of improvements, have we also seen such improvements in the areas of tax, for instance? Because we know that's one talk that has really been around for a very long time, multiple taxation. But just talk to us about your experience of tax regime since at least 1999.
Yeah, the tax regime, initially, we had this sort of multiple taxation from local government and so on, institutions and so on and so forth. But that, through some engagement processes that we had, even between 99 and date, there has been some engagement because some of the biggest issues we had were with some of the local governments. They just come up with all sorts of things. But there has been an agreement between the private sector and the state government, which involved the local governments. Don't forget that the local governments are also independent of the state government. They're also a government of their own. Because I've seen situations where they say that, well, this is what we have done in our own parliament. They also have a small legislature where they can enact some laws. But a lot of people have been brought on board. There have been very much consultation. And this has been largely streamlined in terms of the multiple taxation. So it has improved in terms of, government has actually addressed it. And quite a number of local governments have signed on into a list of what can be levied or what can be taxed and how much actually can be taxed.
Okay. Yeah. Now, Lagos is still the country's leading industrial headquarters. Now, considering that several industrial centers are being changed now to some religious and trading centers, and even housing estates have been, coming up in the state instead of, focusing more on encouraging manufacturing. How much of this do you think is going to be seen? Are we going to see, more focus now turning to encouraging more industrial hubs, coming up instead of, the kind of explosion that we're having where we're seeing industrial estates, changing to religious or trading grounds?
Yes, well, that has to do a lot more with the macro environment. Because when you talk about industrialization, it goes beyond looking at just the state government. Because most of the variables that impact on the efficiency of an industry is beyond the states.
So can it be still said that Lagos is still an industrial hub?
Of course, it's a commercial hub. Let me put it.
Not an industrial
hub. It's a commercial hub. It's a financial hub, but not necessarily an industrial. Because a lot of industries are now, maybe because of space and land issues and so on, many of them are now in Ogun State. But again, a very thin line between Ogun State and Lagos State when you talk about business, when you talk about industries. But it's the commercial now center. I mean, nobody can dispute that.
So, still with regards what the private sector body, in this case now the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, will do in terms of partnering with the new Alausa administration for a greater Lagos, what aspects or in what areas is the body going to be working closely with the new administration coming in to Alausa?
Well, we have always been having very close collaboration with the Lagos State government, and of course that will continue. We collaborate on the area of public-private partnership. Quite a number of projects are supported by the private sector in the environment, issues of managing the environment, for instance, issue of constructing markets, and quite a number of areas, even in the health sector, in the transportation sector. Quite a lot of partnership models have been put in place, and they are working very well. Of course, there are also issues about the statutory obligations of the private sector. I mean, as a private sector organization, of course, You have to also fulfill your own civic obligation. You have to pay your tax and so on. And again, we engage also in ensuring that the quality of economic and business policy is right. Because through the feedback that the state government gets from the private sector, quite a number of policies have been fine-tuned to ensure that we have a conducive environment for business.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf, for joining me on the program and, of course, sharing your perspectives with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
The Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Muda Yusuf. And that's it on today's edition of Business Morning. But if you missed it, log on to youtube.com/channelsweb/business morning to catch up. I'm Harriet Agbenyi. Have a great day.